From your world news headquarters on the World Wide Web, it's time for your daily dose of sanity. This is the Meria Heller Show. Meria Heller is a published author, founder of the Universal Wheel, a lifestyle and philosophy based on our interconnectedness to all living things, a Reiki master, and delivers the news with spiritual views. How many intuitive news decoders, animal rights activists, and vegetarian broadcasters are there? Just one, Meria. Meria has provided independent news for a smart audience for over 13 years now on the Meria Heller Show, available at Meria.net. MERIA.net. And now, here is your host, the mouth that roars, Meria Heller.
Good morning, world. Meria here, alive and kicking. Probably more alive and kicking than most people. And let me tell you, I've got a great show for you today. I'm pretty excited about it. I have a man with me who has a fabulous story. He, at 42 years old, he was told that he had lung cancer and he had 6 months to live. Well, he didn't accept that death sentence like so many people do from their doctors. And he went on to alternative healing and different methods to heal his lung cancer. And today he's with me and he's 80 years young. His name is Carl Helvie. He's a registered nurse. He has a doctorate of public health. He's a nationally recognized health practitioner, a widely published author. He's developed multiple strategies for healthy, holistic aging. And he does do a radio show, Holistic Health Show. You can check him out at holistichealthshow.com. He's got 5 years of his shows archived on site. And we're going to talk about his book, which I devoured from cover to cover when I got it. You Can Beat Lung Cancer, using alternative integrative interventions. And I also want you to know this is not just about lung cancer. This is about all cancers. So I'm very pleased to have Carl Helvie with me. Good morning, Carl.
Good morning, Maria. I'm happy to be with you.
Oh, I'm glad to have you with me. I was reading through your book and I was like, wow, talk about facts and figures and so many things you and I know and have experienced that was so similar. And it's interesting because you do talk about Suzanne Somers' book, Knockout, a lot in your book. And it's funny because my older sister told me you must read Suzanne Somers' book, Knockout, which I read about a month ago because she kept pushing it on me. And now she's got some friends. You know, my sister's older than me, so, you know, her friends are all in their late 60s, early 70s, and they're all coming down with different kinds of cancer. And they're all picking up, of course, Knockout. And now I have your book that I can recommend, You Can Beat Lung Cancer, because I think it's phenomenal. So I want to thank you for being you, because most people would take that death sentence when a doctor tells them you only have X amount of time to live, and they make sure it happens.
Right.
What do you think about that?
It happened with my brother recently. He went with what his doctor wanted. And it took very few months, and he was gone. I thought it was ridiculous. A 91-year-old, they gave him radiation 5 days a week for 5 weeks, lost 65 pounds, had no energy. Then a couple weeks later, he couldn't walk, and a couple weeks later, he died. And I didn't feel I could interfere. I still feel a little guilty that I didn't push more, but I believe people have to make their own decisions, and you can't interfere with the doctor-patient relationship. I did ask him to take Laetrile, which he did, but I don't know how much he remembered because his memory had gotten very bad, so I don't know how much he took.
Well, I'm so sorry to hear that, but I see that all the time, even with members of my own family, aunts, uncles, etc., when they trust the health system, the chemo, the radiation, whatnot, and then they go into remission and they think they had a miracle. And I said, yeah, but you didn't address the cause, okay? When you don't address the cause of cancer, which I believe is an immune system viral situation, of course it's going to reappear. It's not coming back. It never left. It's just going to go somewhere else in your body that hasn't been carved out or radiated to death.
And it comes back stronger, and it's more difficult to do anything with.
Right, but when you try to talk to people that are convinced that the medical treatment they're getting is going to work, there is no talking to them. I have been fortunate to talk to some people, and I can tell you this: anybody that I have recommended ESIAC to has healed, every one of them. Okay,
Right.
and myself
Right.
included. But I remember, and I'm sure you do too, when ESIAC was first revealed in this country, must have been in the 80s. I only found out about it because my teacher, Sun Bear, had become aware of the story of what had happened to Dr. Gary Glum in California, who had published a book on ESIAC called The Calling of an Angel. And the next thing you know, Gary Glum had the IRS tear-assing through his house. And they actually told him, this has nothing to do with your taxes. It has everything to do with your book.
Oh.
But fortunately, Sun Bear had grabbed the original formula, and he had printed it in his magazine at the time, which of course I had then copied, and I have the original formula. And it was interesting to see, because once people were using the formula, and in those days you're looking at a cancer cure, they called it a cancer cure treatment, that cost $5 a month.
Right.
And of course, big pharmaceutical companies wouldn't want something like that released.
No, because even if they got it, they couldn't make money off it.
Exactly. So then I also saw that they started putting out a lot of false formulas to try to discredit ESIAC. If you went into a health food store or you tried to buy it somewhere else, something was missing from the formula or had been switched out.
Right.
But, the legitimate formula, which now you can Google and get the whole recipe, is available now. And in a lot of places they'll call it native tea. But, for me, I bought the herbs and made it myself because I felt, I could share in my own healing by making it myself. I wanted to be a full partner in healing my body.
Right.
And I used, a lot of people wouldn't talk about personal stories, but, I'm living proof. I've used ESIAC to get rid of, on 2 separate occasions, breast tumor and also a tumor I had on my uterus. And I had used the same surgeon. Not that, I allowed surgery, but the same surgeon all 3 times who had taken the mammograms or taken the x-rays, the sonograms, etc., ultrasounds. I said to her, I'll be back in 6 weeks. And I said, is this going to kill me in 6 weeks? And she said, no, why? I said, I'll be back. And I went on ESIAC for 6 weeks, all 3 times, Carl. Same doctor. I went back 6 weeks later. She did ultrasound, sonograms, every test imaginable, and could not find the tumors.
That's great, Maria.
Okay. And you know what her answer was? Oh, you're going to say this is the juice. She said, this is just luck. And I had said to her, how much luck does one person get? Why won't you give this any credibility? But remember, doctors, it's almost like, how they say, if it's not in your conscious mind, you don't see it. I think doctors are only trained to push pills and cut people up, and anything that works, that's outside their realm of reality, they don't give any credibility to whatsoever.
No. Well, I was on a panel last week on PBS TV up in Pennsylvania, and the 3 other panel members, one was an oncologist, one was a surgeon, and one was a thoracic doctor. And so the host said to them, well, you're all into surgery, chemo, etc. What do you think of this man surviving 39 years using all natural interventions? And they said, well, he's an exception. I said, I take exception to be called an exception. I said, I am not an exception. I said, there are many people, and I, enumerated some, and then I used some of Dr. Forsyth's research that was in the book. And that kind of was the end of that.
Well, you're an exception, and I'm lucky.
But, the SEXT I mentioned earlier, I did a show with someone in Canada on Sunday, and he tried continually to discredit me, and one of the things was SEXT. he told me it's been proven that it is not effective, and yet you've got it in your book that it's an effective alternative treatment. I said it is. I've known people that have used it, but they haven't done clinical trials, and so we get off in that direction.
Right. Well, I don't know what, I think it just, for some reason, when you talk about natural healing, even though we're all supposedly taught that the human body is miraculous, it can repair itself in 7 years, you've got all new organs, all new skin. But when you really tell people just how wonderful it is, for some reason it just seems to scare the heck out of them. You get that fear response.
But it's the money. It's the money. They don't want to lose the money. And I figured this one probably has interest in the drug companies.
Oh, I'm sure of it. That's why you have to always check out, what den of thieves are you walking into when somebody asks you to come on their show. You know what I mean? I do it all the time. Being from Brooklyn, it's not like I would sit there quietly and not give them some strong Brooklynese back for attacking me. But,
Right.
when I've experienced it, and for me, I never recommend anything to anybody unless I've used it myself, or I've incorporated it in my life, because I think it would be hypocritical to do that.
Right, I agree.
And I think that's what people will respect about me, and certainly about you. And if they don't respect you, I think the only way we can look at that is we're bringing up some sort of fear for them, and they're choosing fear instead of love. And we can't take it personal because, look, I believe there's a lot of people walking around on their hind legs for the very first time in bodies. They haven't evolved a drop. And we have to be we have to be okay with that, because once upon a time we were probably in that space.
Right, I agree.
Before you tell your story, one of the most incredible facts you have in your book that, stymied me, was one that said, in America, I'm assuming your book is mostly dealing with American accounts, only 11% of people over 65 are on no medications.
Right.
That's a very small amount.
Right.
I'm not over 65 yet, but man, the years are pushing up, and I am over 60. When I went to my doctor for a checkup, the woman asked me, what medications are you on? I said, none. And it was so odd to her that she asked me again, what medications are you on? And I said, none. Now, Carl, she asked me 3 times. And she said to me, you're not on any medication? And I said, no, my gym is my medication, I said, and my food is my medication. And this was so foreign to her that I could see the deer in the headlight look in her eyes, because I saw another woman where they give you a form to fill out for all your medications. She actually asked for a second sheet. And that frightens me. It just truly frightens me. I'm like, God, and these people are behind the wheel of cars driving around.
Right. Now, when it gets to 75, it's worse, because by age 75, the average is 3 chronic illnesses and 5 prescribed medications. And again, I was 81 in August, and I don't take any medications. I don't know of any chronic health problems. And as you say, it's exercise, it's your nutrition, but it's also your faith in a higher being, and it's your optimism, and it's helping other people and keeping busy and not worrying about yourself, and, a whole holistic approach to life.
Exactly. Well, so many people are so miserable. They're miserable with their jobs, they're miserable with their relationships, they hate their own bodies. Because of that, they go on all these psychotropic drugs, which to me only makes them even more miserable than they already were.
Right.
And it's sad to see, because I believe it's all been done by design. If you can keep people sick and fat and depressed, they're easy to control. Which is sad. But Carl, so tell us your story. I just blew over it like it was nothing. But there you were, 42 years old. You're a young man. And I'm assuming you may have had a family or your life going on. And all of a sudden you get told you've got 6 months to live. But I also want to know, what prompted you to go to the doctor in the first place?
Well, it was unusual, Maria, because most people with lung cancer have symptoms when they're at stage 3 or 4, and that's why the death rate is higher for lung cancer than for any other type of cancer, because they don't have symptoms early on. But they also apparently don't have a connection with God. And so I had a dream that told me to go for a chest x-ray, and I believe that God speaks with us if we listen, and that one way is through our dreams. And so I went to my primary doctor, because at that time you had to go through your primary doctor to be referred to any place.
Right.
And he was very conservative, and so I wasn't about to tell him I was there because I had a dream.
Why not?
But he wanted to know, did I have symptoms? And I said no. And he said, well, why do you want an x-ray? And I said, I just do. It's been a while. I just want one. Well, finally he said, okay. And so I had the x-ray, and they found a spot in my lower right lung that hadn't been there previously. And so he asked if I'd go in for a biopsy, and so they did the biopsy, and then the surgeon comes in with the doctor and says they're going to do surgery and chemotherapy. And I said, wait a minute, I don't make snap decisions. And they said, well, this is serious, you'll be dead in 6 months. And I said, well, that's my responsibility. Your responsibility is to tell me the pros and cons of surgery and chemotherapy, and my responsibility is to make the decision. And they kept saying, but you'll be dead in 6 months. And I kept saying, but that's my responsibility. That is not your responsibility.
Right. Which most people wouldn't even think to say. Right. Wow. Well, first of all, reading your book, I when you mention Edgar Cayce, I've been a student of Edgar Cayce since I was, I think, 20 years old. And Edgar Cayce, till this day, as far as I know and I'm concerned, was one of the only true healers. I don't even want to know how you can call him, maybe a spiritual healer. That's never been disproved. And, his treatments, his recommendation for an alkaline diet, a castor oil packs, it all works. I've used it all. And, of course, he was called the sleeping prophet. I mean, he got most of his healings for people in his dream space. Now, unlike you, I didn't get a dream that said go to the doctor. But I would say a couple of years back, the car I was driving this dark-colored Prius. And I started feeling some glitches in it. For me, I can feel my vehicle in my body. And I said, okay, let me take it in. I'll take it in this week and get an oil change. And what was interesting was I had a dream that night. And in the dream, I was shown a bright red Prius with a white pinstripe. New Yorkers, we like to pinstripe our cars. And it was funny because when I went to the dealer the next day, while they're doing the oil change, one of the salesmen started talking to me. He knows about my work and my radio show and my psychic stuff, so he wasn't afraid to talk to me about his psychic experiences. And so we're just having a conversation, and then he just looks at me, and he says, what's it going to take to put you in a new car today, right? So I tell him, sell my house, pay for it, right? So we kept talking, and I told him about, the dream I had the night before. And here's a man who's brave enough to tell me about his dreams, because most men won't do that, let alone with a basic stranger. And he said to me, well, push comes to shove, he says to me, Maria, we happen to have a car just like that with the package you like on it, because I don't ever get it with Bluetooth or any tracking. He says, we actually have one like that. And they ended up making me a great deal. And I looked at him when we were ready to close the deal, and I said to him, it's got to have the white pinstripe on it, just like the dream. So they said, okay, bring it back tomorrow and we'll put the pinstripe on it for you. They didn't find it odd or weird in any way, and when I saw the car, I knew it was the same one from my dream. So my sense was perhaps the one I was driving that I traded up might have caused me to be in an accident or something go awry. I trust my dreams 100%.
Me too. Right.
And you can call it God, I can call it the Great Spirit. Some people call it
Right.
their higher self. To me, semantics is irrelevant.
It's all the same.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, okay, so now you told them, okay, that's my responsibility, and I'll get back with you. So what was the next step? What happened?
Well, then I did have another dream. I'd forgotten about it until you just were telling me.
Aha.
But that night, I had a dream, and I was at the sink washing dishes, and then I went to my Search for God group.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling them about what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the extent of my dream. And so I thought, well, it means I'm supposed to tell them. And so I did. And this girl in my Search for God group, who actually was my physician's sister, but he never knew this. He didn't know we even knew each other. But she was just the opposite of him. She was very progressive. And so she said to me, well, I'd like to work with you on this. She said, let's watch our dreams. Let's ask for guidance. Mm-hmm. And she said, would you like a psychic reading? And I said, great. And she said, well, I know someone I think is the best in the country. And so she arranged for a psychic reading, and we compared notes, and everything came back that I should do natural, that I should not do chemo and surgery. Mm-hmm. And she said, I know a physician in Northern Virginia, and she said, he worked for the National Cancer Institute, and this was like in 1974, but she said he was having so much success that she said the government closed them down. And so she said he's continuing on in his office. And so I said, that's great. And so I went, and he confirmed the diagnoses, and I had to sign forms that I wouldn't report him. And he told me then what to take. And a side note was this: about 6 months ago, I was talking with someone from Northern Virginia, and I had wondered what had happened to the doctor because I had never been able to find him again. Mm-hmm. And they told me that within 5 years after I had finished my treatment, that the Virginia Board of Medicine took his license, which made me very sad because all the guy was doing was trying to save lives. And so I just hope that he found something that was as rewarding to him.
Well, that's what they do. That's what they do to any doctor. I mean, Andrew Wakefield's story is a great one. When he came out and made the connection between autism and the MMR, triple shot, and they kicked him out of the UK. I believe he's in Texas actually practicing now, and I interviewed him because I think his work is superb. But when you take on Big Pharma, which, by the way, Kevin Trudeau had done in his latest book, he took on Big Pharmaceutical and the sham that is our healthcare. He's sitting in jail right now. They may want to give him a life sentence for writing a book.
Really?
But this is all about his political views and what he exposed about the medical industrial complex.
Right.
But, his attitude in prison is wonderful. He's posting every day. He's got somebody posting on Facebook for him every day about what a wonderful experience he's having there, which goes back to what you said a little earlier. Mental attitude is, I think, 80%.
Definitely. Right.
Okay, so you decided you were going to go and do the alternative route. Mm-hmm. And you did say you're 81 now, 81 years young. Mm-hmm. Still off medications, no chronic illness. No old people's disease, no arthritis, no I can't walk up a flight of stairs.
No, I'm up at 6 every morning. I live on the Chesapeake, and actually I live in a 3-story house. I'm up and downstairs. I'm out on the beach at 7 in the morning. And I walk for an hour, and I do my affirmations and some of my meditation when I'm walking. And then I come back and eat breakfast, and then I'm ready to go for the day. And I keep very, very mentally busy, and so, I'm very healthy. And I think, I also discovered my angels about 3 years ago, and so I utilize my angels at times when I get a little bit overwhelmed with some of the things going on. But it seems like they kind of look after me. I live alone, and so they kind of look after me. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great. I mean, you're like one of my heroes. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
When like I said, I'm not 81 yet, but I intend fully to get there and be just as spry as you are. But my own program, I became a vegan, vegetarian, and then, slowly moving into vegan. Actually, it's almost 14 years ago. And 2 years into having just changed my diet, I had gone to my doctor for my usual thyroid 6 months blood work checkup because I was on thyroid medication for about 13 years. And my doctor called me after he got the results and he said to me, Maria, you don't need your medication anymore. Your thyroid is working. So, of course, I was stymied. And I said to him, wait a minute. I said, I've already gone through my menopause. So you're telling me that post-menopause, I have my thyroid, one of your major hormonal systems, has repaired itself. I said, the only thing I've done different is I went vegetarian 2 years ago. He paid absolutely no attention to that. Again, I was told, you're just lucky. Keep doing what you're doing. Now, how much luck does one baby boomer get in one lifetime?
No, not that kind of luck.
Right. But, when I tell people this, there's so many women, have so many hormonal problems. Men today, so many problems, testosterone-wise with their own hormones. 40-year-old men who, their bodies are like 80-year-old men. And I try to tell them, you're not eating the kind of food our grandparents ate. Everything today is filthy and bastardized, especially in the animal world.
Right.
And I mean, that for me, I was living proof. Okay, it took 2 years, but my thyroid did indeed repair itself. I've been off medication now for about 12 years. And it is, I tell people, garbage in, garbage out, but sometimes the garbage doesn't even go out.
Well, the diet was so important on what the doctor told me to do for cancer, and I think that he was so progressive when I considered that was 39 years ago.
Right.
And I read all of the research now every week, and I pull out the natural things and put on my holistic health website, and there is so much now about the effect of fruit and vegetables and nuts and grains and all of the stuff that he recommended as my diet 39 years ago.
You were so lucky to find a doctor like that.
Right. And the other thing is that 39 years ago, you didn't have to worry about the growth hormone, the genetically modified food, and the pesticides, and all the stuff that's in our food supply. And so now I feel that anyone that has cancer or wants to prevent it needs to be either on organic or they need to eat locally grown if they know the farming practices of the farmer. And it wasn't that way 39 years ago. I mean, you could eat what was there for you to eat.
Everything was organic. I remember when I was a kid, okay, we'll go back a little further than 39 years. But, in the neighborhood where I lived, you had a separate store for everything you wanted to buy. It wasn't like you could go into a grocery store. Okay, a grocery store in my time, when I was a kid, maybe 10 to 12 years old, was really just for sundries, dry goods. But if you wanted meat, you went to a butcher shop. If you wanted fish, you went to a fish market. If you wanted fruits and vegetables, you had a fruit and vegetable stand across the street. And I remember, I remember my mother yelling to each store owner what our order was for the day out the window. And then she would send us with some money wrapped up in a handkerchief. And for people that don't know what a handkerchief is, look it up, Google it. She'd send us with money in the handkerchief that she'd throw to us from the window. And we would go and we would pick it out, and the guy would put it in a paper sack. And I remember when I would take it home, if my mom or my grandmother was cooking the greens, it was normal to take a spatula with some holes in it and skim the bugs off the top of the boiling water.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you couldn't get more organic than that.
Right.
You
right.
knew it was organic because there was dirt and bugs in it, real dirt, soil. But when you look at the homogenized, pasteurized, bastardized food in these pretty little packages today, there's no sign of it being organic. And lucky, I put a lot of pressure on my local grocers, so we have a really good organic section in our store now. But people are getting more aware of it, but they don't get, people say, well, my grandmother ate meat and fish and she smoked and she drank and she was 98 when she died. And I'm like, yeah, but we're not eating what they ate.
Right. Well, the other thing is that the people in the past, I think, ate more salads and things. And see, that's another downfall of people now. They eat not only the processed, but everything is cooked. And, you need the raw fruit and vegetables in terms of enzymes in your body, because there's a digestion that takes place in the upper stomach. And if you've got the enzymes from the raw fruit and vegetables, then there's some digestion takes place there. But otherwise, it goes to the lower stomach, puts a big burden on the pancreatic enzymes. And then, especially meat doesn't get fully digested, and then it sits in the gut, and then it becomes putrid, and then you develop all these horrible diseases, and you don't have adequate, pancreatic enzymes. And so I think that's very important. And see, my diet was 75% raw fruit and vegetables. I think people need to. I try to have a salad, one meal a day, that's just raw fruit and vegetables. I mean, raw vegetables mainly.
Right.
I think that's important for
Absolutely. Carl, we're going to take a short break. When we get back, I want to talk more about your plans, some of the suggestions in this book. Because, listen, if you are listening to this show and you don't have cancer and you don't want to have cancer, you're going to want to stay tuned. And I'm sure you know somebody in your family or circle of friends that's already going through this. And the reason for educating people is to let you know you have options. You don't have to get into fear. So stay with us. Carl and I will be right back.
Wow. One solid hour of commercial-free information thanks to you. The person who wants truth has the integrity and understanding to support it with your donation and subscription. Meria believes people can handle the truth and delivers it tirelessly with those with ears to listen. 14 years on the net. Won't you take a moment right now to commit to a subscription of your choice at www.meria.net. That's MERIA.net. Over 1,100 hours of pure education all in one place, 24/7 and all downloadable. Knowledge is power. Sharing that knowledge is wisdom. Together we can change the world and create real hope. Now let's get back to the Meria Heller Show.
Okay, we're back. I'm talking with Carl Helvie. He's a registered nurse. He's got a doctorate in public health. He is a man who not only talks the talk, he has walked the talk. He's living proof that alternative integrative interventions are the way to go. And when I have clients ask me, I just found out this one has cancer, I have cancer, I tell them if they're going to go the traditional method, they'll be dead in no time. And that's the way I feel about it. Whether you agree with that or not, my listeners, that's your choice. But I know what works. I know what works for me and countless people that I've talked to over the years. Carl's book, You Can Beat Lung Cancer. Remember, this is a great book. Doesn't matter if it's lung cancer or any other kind of cancer. Everything you need to know about cancer is going to be in here. Using alternative integrative interventions. Carl, we talked a little bit about the diet. My mom, back in the day, a long time ago, one of my dad's friends was the owner of a major vitamin company. And I remember my mother had taken sick. I don't remember what it was at the time, but God, we're talking about 50 years ago. He came, I'm trying to remember which vitamin company. It might have been Sol Ray. I don't really remember. But when he heard my mom was sick, he came over with something none of us had ever seen before. he came over with a juicer
Mm-hmm.
and a whole lot of vegetables. And he taught my mother how to use that juicer. And he told her to juice for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a miracle.
Mm.
You know, now juicing's come back in vogue, especially thanks to the Joe Cross, who put out that wonderful movie, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think juicing fits in for cancer treatment?
Well, I've known people on Facebook, like Chris is one, and he did a lot of juicing, and he had colon cancer, and he overcame that, and I think his major thing was juicing. And then I know other people that have used the Bedwick diet and juicing, and that has overcome it for them. And I haven't done it. I once a week on my diet, I was supposed to do a day of just juices, but I just used regular juices, vegetable juice, and from containers. I didn't do any juicing at that time. But I think that it's been very effective for people. I think that I gained weight when I was on that diet, and so I think that juices would have been a lot of weight producing that.
Well, you know, pre-made juices.
I wouldn't have gotten any roughage from it.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, you know, pre-made juices has a lot of sugar and crap in it. You know,
Yeah.
and when you're just juicing, you know, extracting the juice of natural food, it's totally different. You know, a few months back, I started getting migraines. I've had migraines on and off, in my past life. And I certainly didn't want to go the medical route. And when you have a migraine, believe me, you'll try anything, including putting a bullet through your head. But I had seen Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, and there was a woman there that had talked about getting rid of her migraines with juicing. And I looked up a juice recipe, and it was basically saying to get those dark red or purple grapes, you know, a pound at a time, and just juicing it and drinking the juice. And they suggested drinking that juice like 3 times a day. And I can honestly tell you it took 2 days, and because my migraines would come and they would stay for 6 months at a time. It took 2 days, and they did not manifest. You know, so I'm learning as I go along. You know, I'm open to new ideas, and people better start getting open to new ideas, because the old ones, I mean, this war on cancer has been going on since I was a baby.
Right.
You know, and I don't see any improvement. I don't see any miracle drug, you know.
No, I think it's getting worse because, you know, of all of the stuff in our food and water and air and, you know, the processed foods that people eat and all. I think that everyone knows someone that has cancer now. And I think it's getting worse instead of better.
I agree. Well, I think it's all been by design, but then that's
I do
me.
too.
Okay.
Right.
And now we have all this radiation from Fukushima. So even my friends that want to argue realize that eating fish is no longer an option, ever.
Right.
You know, but why does it take the worst scenario for people to get it? You know, why do they have to wait until they have an active disease to say, what can I do about it, you know?
Well, you know, it's even simple things like fish oil. You know, people take the pills, the capsules for fish oil, but you have to think.
Where's it coming from?
Contaminated.
Right.
You know, I take lecithin.
Well, I take flaxseed.
I get non-genetically modified lecithin. So even the supplements are contaminated, and you have to be very picky about what supplements you use.
I totally agree. And when people ask me, I say usually the cleanest ones you're going to get are the ones that say vegetarian formula.
Right.
But, you know, I take flaxseed oil because I won't touch fish oil. To me, that's A, it's gross, and B, I know too much.
Right.
You talked a little bit about exercise, because you did say you pretty much exercise, you know, every day.
Right.
How important do you think exercise is if someone has an active cancer in their recovery?
Well, the research shows that exercise and cancer are very closely related too. I mean, I was surprised when I saw that exercise has a preventive factor as far as cancer and also helps. But, you know, it's very useful. It's even like, you remember when women used to have emphysema. No, it was it. You know, when they had their breast removed and their arm became swollen and all as a result of that. And they used to tell them to keep it still. Now they're saying they need to exercise that too.
Right. Well,
I remember that because Ingrid Bergman was my favorite actress, and I've read everything that has been written about her, and she apparently was getting ready for her role as Golda Meir, and she wanted to mimic her in the movie with her hands, and she said she stayed up all night, and she had emphysema. No, that's
you mean edema, where you just blow up with the water?
Yeah, right. And she was up all night trying to master that, but she said it was very painful lifting her arm and all. But
yes,
now they're recommending that you do the exercises. So I think exercises are very important, and I think that they will help delay illnesses. As I said, I live in a 3-story house. I'm up and downstairs. I walk the beach for an hour in the morning, and it helps.
Absolutely.
Along with everything, I think it's really a holistic approach.
Absolutely. It's got to be the whole enchilada. You know, about 20 years ago, my mom had breast cancer. Now, at that time, I did not know everything that I know today. I didn't know about SIAC. But I did know about chaparral because I lived in Arizona. And the Native Americans here use chaparral for tumors and skin diseases and so many things for forever. And my mother was going through chemo and radiation in Florida. And I told her I was going to come down, and I went out in the desert and I cut some chaparral and I put it in a brown sack and I took it down to Florida with me. Now, because of the radiation, her arm, which is what you're talking about, had blown up into like an inhuman size where it was almost seeping. And it was so painful that you couldn't even touch her, as light as a feather. And she was saying that a lot of the creams and whatnot they gave her were not working. And I had made the tea out of chaparral, and I told her, I said, look, I'm going to make you this tea and I want you to drink it, but you can't tell your doctor you're taking it. Because if he knows you're taking it, he's going to tell you not to take it.
Right.
And it tastes pretty bad, okay? You know, real medicine tastes pretty bad. But when I had seen her arm and how bad it was, you know, I slept over, of course, and I had a dream. And in the dream, I was shown how to make a poultice out of the chaparral, and I was told to get very soft cotton and take the tea and lightly tap her arm with it. So when I woke up, I told my mother about the dream, and I says, Ma, what do you got to lose? You know, to me, it's what do you got to lose? She tried everything else. She said the instant that chaparral tea touched her arm, it was like a wonderful cooling sensation. And the pain was gone. Now, the doctors could never understand how my mother was in the 4th stage of breast cancer and managed to live 2 years pain-free. She would take roast beef sandwiches with her to her radiation treatments, okay? And you know people get violently nauseous and sick from that.
Right.
And I just told her, I made her promise me that she wouldn't tell the doctors because I knew they would tell her not to use it.
Right.
You know, I just, you know, I guess for whatever her soul's journey was, you know, it wasn't for me to know at that point about SIAC or whatnot. I hadn't learned about that till, you know, the late 80s. But, you know, people, it's not only just the holistic routine and the benefits that nature can heal all of us. I mean, we are a part of nature, whether people want to admit it or not. But to pay attention to your intuition, whether that comes into, you know, oh, I just got this bright idea, or it's a dream, or it's a premonition. People need to pay attention because your higher self is always telling you the best thing for you. And a lot of people don't get it. Couple of questions, because you have so much in this book. There's a lot we're not going to be able to touch on. People, you're just going to have to buy the book. I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but I'm going to say it because a lot of people don't know. In your book, you talk about digestion and being healthy means having how many bowel movements a day?
Oh, is that in the book?
Oh, yeah. Maybe, because, well, I know the book has a lot of interviews by other doctors, but I argue this with a lot of my friends, and they're like, Maria, we're going to talk about bowel movements again?
Oh, it probably is in the chapter on nutrition that Kim wrote, but I would say probably 2 or 3 a day. That's what I tend to have when I'm feeling the best.
Right. So
and, I talked with someone that's medical intuitive recently, and she said that one thing that makes your bowel movements softer is magnesium, and that if you aren't taking adequate magnesium, that may be why you're having hard stools.
Well, I think it's diet too. You need the right diet.
Oh yeah, not enough fiber.
Right, and exercise. Exercise moves the body, so everything's moving. So it's pushing everything into downward spiral. It's like, get ready, boys. We're about to see the tidy ball man. But a lot of my friends don't get that. And I know a lot of people don't have a bowel movement at all every day.
Really?
And, well, look how many people are constipated. Just look at how much crappy medicine they're selling people, for constipation, this, that, hemorrhoids. They don't realize hemorrhoids are a byproduct of being constipated. It's all connected.
Well, I tend to be one that would not have a bowel movement, even though I eat a lot of raw fruit and vegetables. But I take a tablespoon of akaya, I think it is. It's a fiber. I take a tablespoon of that, level tablespoon of that in the morning, and I eat 6 prunes because I know that prunes are good for you and you need some. And so I take 6 prunes and the level spoon of the akaya, and then I have, as I say, probably 3 movements every day.
Great. Well, for me, I'm good for that before noon. But, I use Tahitian noni juice. I've been taking it for 20-something years. I take a shot glass first thing in the morning. That's like, and then I know in 10 minutes, I know where I'm going to be. But, I also work out. I go to the gym 6 days a week. I eat organic food. I try to make my meals mostly vegetables. If there's carbs, they've got to be healthy carbs.
Right.
Stay away from packaged foods, processed foods. And, we can all just do the best we can do. Nobody's saying you and I are saints or holy rollers, but we're just sharing what we know has worked for us.
Well, the other thing I do, Maria, and I follow pretty much what you're saying you do, but I measure out water, and because a lot of people my age don't drink enough water, and they get dehydrated, and then they get dizzy, and they don't feel good. And so I measure out, and I measure usually 50 ounces in the morning and 50 ounces in the afternoon. And I start like whenever I get up, and I take an equal amount every hour. I started by setting the alarm, and then now I just know when it's an hour, it's time to drink water, so that your cells get continual hydration during the day. And then I do the 50 ounces in the afternoon. I usually stop about 6 or 7 at night. But I went to emergency last week, and they kept me overnight because they found something a little unusual in my EKG. But then they did the stress test, and I was on the treadmill for 5 minutes. And I could have gone longer, but I figured that was pretty good for 81.
Right.
But they told me after 5 minutes I could stop, and so I stopped. And everything was okay. But one thing I noticed during the night is she told me my blood pressure was 90/30. And I said, well, it doesn't usually go quite that low. Usually it goes 110/70 or something. And so they figured that I was dehydrated. And so they gave me an IV, and my blood pressure went up to where it was supposed to be. So now I take a half glass of water just before I go to bed.
Right.
And
well, a lot of people don't drink enough water. I had a doctor on my show once who said that all headaches come as a result of not drinking enough water. And
it could be related because, there's toxins in your body that need to be flushed out. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. For me, I always have a glass around, and I'm always refilling it.
Right.
So, I think about that George Carlin skit about, when everybody was carrying water bottles. He says, when did we all become so thirsty as a country? I thought it was hilarious. But, when I go to the gym, I bring a 22-ounce bottle of, water with some recharge in it for my electrical system. And I drink that whole thing in the hour I'm there. So, you gotta, you have to hydrate. And people think drinking coffee and iced tea and sodas adds to that, but it doesn't. It doesn't count. It has to be real water. It has to be just water, clean water. You talk about, and maybe it wasn't just you, I love the chapter with Bernie Siegel because I interviewed Bernie. He's like another one of my heroes on the planet. And Bernie is all about learning how to love yourself. How important is that in your healing process?
Oh, that's very, very important. And I think Louise Hay has done an awful lot to help people to like themselves more. And I think she's done it because she was abused as a child and then developed cancer and then started fighting back and learned all kinds of ways to love herself. And then she tried to help other people. One of the things that one of her books that I liked the best was You Can Heal Your Life.
Absolutely. It was one of my early reads.
Exercises you can do, like even if it's just looking in the mirror at yourself and looking in your eyes and saying, I love you just as you are, just saying that over and over. And she's got all kinds of exercises that people can do, and I think that they're effective. They worked with her, and as you said earlier, when you have walked the walk, you usually have something that is helpful to someone else.
Well, yeah, and the people I respect the most and always have are the ones that have experienced it. They walked the talk. They didn't just read a book and say, I'm an expert now, and they really are clueless. You talk about the power of prayer, or for some people you could consider that meditation, or however you contact, whatever there is that you believe in. And I thought about Larry Dossey's work on prayer and the difference it makes in so many people's healings.
Right.
So, there's so much, whatever works. To me, it's like a little bit of everything. But of course, I'm sorry.
I was impressed with Dr. Forsyth's work also, because he's having such high success, using stage 4, 5-year survival, and he's having 46% success with all cancer patients and 39% with lung cancer patients, and this is in comparison with 2 or 3% for traditional. And of course, because he was so successful, the FDA went after him and the medical profession, and they took him to court, and he said they couldn't do anything, but they tried to bankrupt him, and he said it cost a lot of money to defend himself. And I think he's doing, when I read that, I decided that I wanted to see why he was doing such a good job that they went after him, because I looked him up on the internet, and then I figured, that's why, because he's having so much success. And so I thought, well, I'd like him to write a chapter in my book. So he was very kind and wrote a chapter for me, and I'm impressed with what he's doing.
Oh yeah, you've got a lot of really good contributors to this book, without question of a doubt.
Right.
But I think too, people have to get, your doctors out there, they're not gods. They're fallible. Okay.
Right.
And they're only trained to know what they know. They don't know anything about diet and nutrition. I remember when I was a young girl, I was probably about 17, and I wasn't having regular menses. So I went to the doctor, and my doctor must have been 350 pounds. He's sitting behind his desk smoking a cigarette, and he looked at me, and after an exam and whatever, I was probably, I don't know, maybe 155 pounds at that point. He looked at me and he says, well, your solution is, he said, he says, you've got to lose weight. So I looked at him and I said, can you give me the secret of your diet? I told you I'm from Brooklyn. I can't help myself. He got insulted and I just walked out. I figured when this is supposed to level out, it'll level out on its own.
Right.
But, I'm telling you that story for a reason. Most doctors really are clueless.
Right.
And, when they come down with cancer, are they going to do the same extreme treatment on themselves that they're okay doing on everybody else? The chances are no.
Well, my brother, as an example, they told him when he was doing the radiation he could eat anything he wanted. They said, why don't you just go and have some donuts?
Donuts, right. That's crazy. Carl, we're out of time. This was a quick, pleasant hour with you. I want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Maria. I've enjoyed it.
Oh, me too. And for my listening audience, stay with me tomorrow. Dave McGowan's coming back to the show, and it's going to be quite the interesting show. Thanks for supporting my show. I'll see you guys then.
Thank you for listening and supporting The Meria Show. Tell others what you learned today. Knowledge becomes wisdom only when it's shared. Encourage others to subscribe today. www.meria.net. Often imitated, never duplicated. A world of information all in one place. www.meria.net. Always ahead of the curve. Always on your side. Get active or get radioactive. Subscribe today.